It's nice to see some names that I recognize. It's unfortunate that I can't actually be in Southeast Asia with you today, but hopefully in this environment we can share our knowledge and be equally as close to each other, even though we're so far away. The focus of my presentation today will be on product indication and classification practice at EUIPO, the impact this has on multiple applications, bearing in mind the unity of class requirement. I will also explain the practice of the EUIPO regarding the classification of new types of designs, and in that respect you may recognize some of the examples from the presentation my colleague Stefan Hane gave on Tuesday. And finally, we'll take a quick look at the databases that the EUIPO uses for search purposes. So first of all, the Article 36(2) of our Community Design Regulation requires that an applicant for a community design indicates the products in which the design is intended to be incorporated or in which it is intended to be applied. And that indication must be worded in such a way as to indicate clearly the nature of the products and to enable each product to be classified in only one class of the Lucano Classification. That being said, neither the product indication nor the classification affects the scope of protection of a community design, and the holder of the community design has the exclusive right to use the relevant design in all types of products and not only in the product indicated in the application. So classification serves purely administrative purposes, and in particular it serves the purpose of allowing third parties to search the registered community design database. So I was saying that more than one product can be indicated in the application. Just one second. When more than one product is indicated in the application, the products do not have to belong to the same class of the Lucano Classification unless several designs are combined in a multiple application, and this will we will look at in depth a little later on. So, moving on to the Lucano Classification, as most of you already know, this is an international classification for industrial designs. It exists in 2 official languages, namely French and English. Its structure and contents are adopted and amended by the Committee of Experts of the countries party to the Lucano Agreement, and it is administered by EUIPO, the World Intellectual Property Organization. The current edition is the 12th edition, and it contains 32 classes and 237 subclasses. The EUIPO uses design class, which is based on the Lucano Classification, and the applicants do not themselves have to classify the products in which their design is intended to be incorporated, but it is highly recommended in order to aid to speed up the registration procedure. We also recommend that the applicants use the terms themselves that appear in design class, also to help speed up the registration procedure, because our RCD applications are translated into all of the languages of the EU. So when our applicants use the terms that are listed in design class, there's no need for translation. So that saves some delays in the registration procedure. Each class and subclass of the Lucano Classification and design class has a heading, and the class and subclass headings give a general indication of the fields into which the products belong. We don't recommend using the class headings themselves, although they are acceptable. We don't recommend it. We prefer our applicants to choose either the headings of the subclass, or even better, the more specific terms listed in the subclass. So if we move on to our practice, where an applicant indicates terms that are not in the Lucano Classification or design class, In straightforward cases, our examiners will change the wording ex officio with an equivalent or more general term from Lucano Classification or design class. And the purpose would be to avoid delays, once again, in the registration procedure for reasons of translation, as I mentioned earlier. So, for instance, with the example on the screen, if the applicant had chosen the term sneakers to indicate the product in which the design will be incorporated, the examiner would change this indication to sports shoes or trainers, or an equivalent term that is available and already translated in design class. Where a design represents the appearance of a part of a product, and that product as a whole is indicated in the application. So, for example, if the design is of a table leg, but the applicant specifies that the design is for tables, the examiner will replace the product indication by the indication tables, open brackets, part of, close brackets, provided that both the part in question and the product as a whole belong to the same class. On the other hand, if the appearance is of the product as a whole, but only part of the product is indicated as a product indication in the application. So, for example, in the case of the design of a knife, if the product indication specified that the design is knife handles, in that case, what we would do is raise an objection and ask the applicant to either disclaim the contours of the part of the design that does not correspond to the product indication, in which case a new filing date would be accorded, or we ask them to replace the product indication with the product term for the whole product. So in this case, it would be for the knife itself and not the knife handles. And in that case, the original filing date is maintained. Now, where a design represents a set of products, and these products are indicated in the application, so for example, an application for a set of furniture specifies that the products in which the design will be incorporated are furniture, the examiner will replace that indication with furniture, open brackets, set of, close brackets. Where the design represents ornamentation for a given product, and only that product as a whole is indicated in the application. So, for example, if the product indication was carpets, the examiner will replace that product indication by the indication carpets, open brackets, ornamentation for, close brackets, and the product would then be classified in class 3200 of the Lucano classification. But where the product indication is ornamentation and the design is not limited to representing the ornamentation, but it also discloses the contours of the product to which the ornamentation is applied, without those contours being disclaimed, then the examiner will raise an objection and suggest either disclaiming the contours, in which case, once again, a new filing date must be accorded, or replacing the indication ornamentation with the product indication for the product disclosed. So in this case, if they had applied for ornamentation, we would, and it showed the full carpet, we would ask them to replace the product indication with carpets. And this reasoning also applies for graphic symbols, logos, and surface patterns that are also in class 3200 of the NIS classification. Our Article 3 of the Community Design Implementing Regulation requires that the products be worded, the indication of products be worded in such a way as to clearly indicate the nature of the products and to enable each product to be classified in only one class of the Lucano classification. So the examiner will also object to the product indication if it does not enable each product to be classified in only one class of the Lucano classification. This will be the case where the indication is too vague or ambiguous to allow the nature of the products in question to be determined. So things such as gifts or novelty items or souvenirs or electric devices. These are all considered to be too vague to allow classification in a single class. And it will also be the case where the indication concerns a service rather than a product. On the slide here, you can see some examples of the different parts of perhaps the same final product that are classified in different classes. And here also where we can see that household appliances can fall into different classes depending on their nature. So this is something that's very important for our applicants to take into account, especially if they're filing multiple applications because of the unity of class requirement, which we will look at shortly. Our examiners will also raise an objection if there is no indication of the products at all. And also, since one of the main objectives of the product indication and classification is to make the community designs register searchable by third parties, the examiner will also raise an objection where the product indication clearly does not match the product as disclosed in the representation of the design. So here on the screen, we have an example of what appears to be a toy penguin, and the product indication is cars. So this clearly does not correspond, and an objection would be raised. So now we move on to multiple applications and the unity of class requirement. A multiple application is a request for the registration of more than one design within the same application. Each of the designs contained in a multiple application is examined and dealt with separately. So each design can be enforced, licensed, be subject to rights in rem, insolvency. It can be surrendered, renewed, or even the subject of invalidity proceedings separately from the rest of the designs in the multiple application. Multiple applications are subject to specific registration and publication fees, which decrease in proportion to the number of designs. All designs in a multiple application must have the same owner and the same representative, but the number of designs contained in a multiple application is unlimited. The designs need not be related to one another or be otherwise similar in terms of appearance, nature, or purpose, but they must meet the unity of class requirement. Now, as a general rule, all products indicated for the designs contained in a multiple application must be classified in only one of the 32 Lucano classes. However, there is an exception, and that is the indication ornamentation or product, open brackets, ornamentation 4 in class 3200, because this can be combined with indications of products belonging to another Lucano class. The products indicated for each design in a multiple application may differ from those indicated in others. However, except in cases of ornamentation, as I've already mentioned, any products that are indicated for each of the designs in a multiple application must belong to the same class of the Lucano classification. So this unity of class requirement is considered to be complied with, even if the products belong to different subclasses of the same class. So, for instance, in a multiple application for motor vehicles, one of the designs being for motor vehicles in class 12.8, and another design being for vehicle interiors in class 12.16. This would be perfectly acceptable because the two designs are in the same class, even though they're in different subclasses. However, we would raise an objection in the same example if a third design was included for lights for vehicles, for example, because these are classified in class 26, subclass 5 of the Lucano classification. So there's no longer a unity of class in that multiple application. We would then require the application to be divided. As I mentioned, ornamentation is a different situation. Although it's a product itself within the meaning of Lucano, its primary purpose is to be one of the features of other products. So representations of ornamentation should not include the product to which it will be applied. A multiple application can therefore combine designs for ornamentation with designs for products, such as those to which that ornamentation will be applied, provided that all the products belong to the same class of the Lucano classification. And this reasoning regarding ornamentation also applies to graphic symbols, logos, and surface patterns in class 32. So let's move on to office practice regarding the classification of new types of designs. Those of you that were here on Tuesday may recognize some of these images from the presentation that Stefan gave in relation to the examination of new types of designs. Now we're going to focus on their classification, and as I've already mentioned, our office uses Lucano Classification, and so it classifies these new types of designs in accordance with Lucano. However, obviously there are new designs that are always emerging on the register, at least, if not yet on the market, and these are not clearly contained in Lucano, and these cause problems for our examiners. So if we go through each of the designs on this screen, the first design at the top left of the screen was filed with the product indication icons, and so it is classified in class 14.4, icons for computers. However, if the applicant had indicated the product indication logos, we would have accepted that indication as well, and then the design would have fallen into class 32.00. And this is an important thing for applicants to consider because of the unity of class requirement in multiple applications, where I've already mentioned that logos in class 32.00 are also one of the exceptions for the unity of class requirement. So if we look at the next design, that of a projected keyboard, perhaps we could do a little poll now to see how you would examine this design in your offices. So for the poll, a question will appear on your screen, and I would ask you to vote. Please listen to the question carefully and read it carefully, because you only have one chance to vote and you cannot change your mind. So, can we have the poll question? Okay, so for the design of the projected keyboard, would you accept the projected image only, accept the device only, or accept both the projected image and the device as shown in the presentation? Could you please vote? Okay, voting has closed, and we have an overwhelming majority of 63% that would accept both the projected image and the device as shown in the presentation. 23% would accept the image only, and 14% would accept the device only. So, very interesting. Let's move on. I can tell you that for EUIPO, we would also accept the projected image and the device in class 14.2, devices for the projection of virtual keyboards. The next image that we can see on the screen is that of a hologram. In EUIPO, we would classify this in class 20.03, holographic signs, indicators, and devices. The design in the middle of the screen of a display would be classified in class 14.4 as a graphic user interface. And when we move on to the arrangement of an interior of a room, this we would accept and classify in class 32.00 as get up arrangement of the interior of a room. And finally, this is one that we are also struggling with at the moment. We have the image here of a virtual space or get up. And perhaps we could do a poll here also to see how you would classify this in your offices. So could we have the poll question, please? The question is, how would you classify a virtual environment, such as the arrangement of the interior of a room or a car, in a virtual reality game? In class 14.4 as a graphical user interface, in class 32.00 as the get-up or arrangement of the interior of a room, or would you say that we would not accept virtual environments as a product design? I'll wait again for you all to vote. Okay, I think we should probably look at the results now, even if not everybody has had the chance to vote, so that we can move on. Okay, we have 47% who say that they would not accept virtual environments as a product design. That's in first place. Second place, 32% would classify in class 14.4 as a graphic user interface, and 21% in class 32.00 as the get up or arrangement of the interior of a room. So I'm quite pleased to see that you all have the same problems that we have in the EUIPO at the moment. We are currently accepting virtual spaces in class 14.4 as a graphic user interface. So just quickly to summarize the EUIPO practice in respect of the new types of designs, we classify in accordance with Lucano, although as I've said, it's quite limited at the moment. We can, of course, use subclass 14.4 screen displays and icons, which was created in the 8th edition of the Lucano Classification in 2003, and which contains graphical user interfaces or computer screen layout and icons for computers. So finally, I'd like to just quickly move on to the databases that the EUIPO uses for search purposes. And I think it's important to remember that the EUIPO's examination of the substantive protection requirements is limited to 2 grounds for non-registrability, i.e. the application will be refused if the design does not correspond to the definition of the design, or if it is contrary to public policy or accepted principles of morality. So in reality, the only searches the EUIPO performs are in relation to classification. And in this respect, I would like to mention the Convergence Programme project in relation to product indications that took place in the EU. The objective of the project was to create a common harmonized product indication database and harmonized practice by using a common classification list. The creation of the harmonized database of product indications was in order to improve and enhance the ability to search for and find a desired product indication easily. And by limiting the risk of objection based on formalities, which it often implies further costs for remedying the deficiency, the convergence of product indications would also reduce the costs associated to the filing of a design with the different IP offices. Now, the result of that project is Design Class, which you can see on your screens there. Design Class is a tool, and it offers a set of user-friendly features that can help users to find product indications in the harmonized database that best match with the products for which they want to register the design. And all of this is in an easily accessible online web environment. The main features are that it enables for terms to be searched easily, translated easily, and browsed easily. And I believe Gerardo will be talking a bit more about Design Class in his presentation, so I will leave it there for now. Thank you very much.